Hello ladies, I'm Mrs. Sherman and I have a blog for which I am making these videos. So if you would please go over to my blog, I provide a link for it, and watch this video on my blog so that you can see the other things on the same post and the comments. Please leave a comment. These are designed as homemaker support to listen while you work. You know, sometimes we just need something extra. Maybe you're having a hard time beginning your work today, and maybe you have just retired from a lifetime of working outside the home. It's kind of hard sometimes to get started. What do I do? How do I start the day? Because most of the time people get dressed and go somewhere else. So how do you start the day so that your home is now your station of activity and work and making a life? And so this is what this is for. So you can listen as you go. There might be something interesting that's for you. I can't please everybody, but I don't like to watch things while I work, so this is just to listen to after you see my teacup and my show and tell. And so I'll let you go and you can get busy and you can fold something, sort something, load something, unload something, do what you did yesterday. And you know, homemaking is very repetitive and isolating in many ways, but we can make it different and we can make it interesting. We can even make it better than it is anywhere else. So today I am wearing a blue corduroy suit, jacket, and skirt from Old Pueblo Traders. And normally those clothes at that catalog I don't buy them because they're too short on me. And I am a little taller and like them a little bit longer. But this one did fit, and I really like the, I don't wear royal blue very much. I really like the effect, and so I decided to perch my camera to show you the farmhouse painting that I got at Goodwill a few months ago, because it had some blue in it, and the teacup is just wonderful. Sent to me by Amy in Idaho. Amy, thank you. This is the only blue cup I have that's this kind of blue, and it's a Royal Albert. Can you? This is just so beautiful, and it was in such good shape. It, you know, still had the gold around the rim, and there was no wearing out or anything. So isn't it pretty? Isn't it pretty? Well, anyway, while I had got this out, and I noticed there was something in it, and a few years ago my grandchildren had been introduced to the county fair, which is for rural people to enter things they have done, things they have grown, things they have made and built, carpentry, anything like that, and they get prizes for it. And if you get a blue ribbon, you get also a check for $10, and there's money provided to the county from the state by that for that event to encourage people to enter their item. And you can even enter. There was one lady I know that entered every category she could, even photography, and she actually earned quite a bit of money. And the next year she started over, and she said that a lot of it was the quality of the item, that even though she didn't maybe knit perfectly, but she used the best yarn, and she did very well. But anyway, they were impressed because I got a blue ribbon for something I had entered, and they began making blue ribbons and leaving them around for me. And I found one in this teacup, so I want to show you this little cardstock blue ribbon that one of the grandchildren left me, and it was a first prize. And they were going around making blue ribbons out of cardstock and anything they could find, and leaving them in places that they liked. Like they liked my china cabinet, so there's another first prize blue ribbon. And I saved them. I couldn't believe it. I just didn't want to throw them away. No one has ever done that for me, you know. Have you ever thought of leaving little blue ribbons around for your children, actually making them out of blue ribbon and leaving them around? But they were leaving them around every place they liked in my house. If they liked, you know, the dinner, they'd leave a blue ribbon there. If they liked the room that they slept in, they'd leave me a blue ribbon. I thought that was just fantastic. And then we also did, when our children were little, when we were young, when we were growing up, and I believe I might have tried this with my children once, and with the grandchildren, is we created our own little county fair in our house, and we just had a table, and everybody entered a drawing, a craft, a item of baked food, and we entered it, and then we allowed all of the children to be the judges, and they gave blue ribbons. Of course, everybody got blue ribbons, and every other color ribbon too. So now I just want to show you one more thing so that you can get on with your work. I don't want to delay you. I know that some of you, maybe you're not feeling good, maybe you're having a day of just rest, and so you are just watching. There's actually nothing to watch here except what I'm going to show you, and after that I hope that you will be able to do something. Well, I'm going to do a book here today. It's called Country Tea Parties, and being a country girl, I always like anything with the label country on it. And what I liked about this is by Maggie Stuckey. I'll stick this on my blog so you can go get one. Thrift Books and Abe Books and some of these other nice thrift stores. They're wonderful because they will give you a free book after you've ordered a couple. And you don't have to wait a year or anything, just maybe 2 books, and then you get a free one. And they have free postage on many of them, so I really like them. But first thing I noticed was the end papers. Now, end papers are the inside cover, and it looks like scrapbook paper, and it's very pretty. I really enjoy books that have, and these end papers have little teapots all over them. It's really cute. So when we were teaching our children how to make homemade books, we would have rubber stamps, and we'd rubber stamp the end papers or make it look like a real book. And so I wanted to introduce this to you because the first page has the blue teacup, like the one I was using today. And the reason that I bought this book was because of the paintings in it. I just love the line drawings and the paintings and the watercolors, and there's blue teacup. So I'm going to go through it and just show you a few of these pictures. To me, it was such a beautiful, clean book that was in such good taste, so elegant, that I would leave this on my coffee table for my children to pick up, and they would get a sense of art by looking at books like this. And what I would do with books is just leave them on my coffee table and then let them go and look at them. And I wouldn't say anything about them, just leave them there, and it would pique their interest. So I wanted to show you another picture, another painting here, because it's the pictures in here that were probably the biggest attraction of this book. And they also had a Queen's tea. They also have the recipes for the teas and the menus. And there's quite a bit of this, like here's a Mother's Day tea right here. I'll read from you about that. Just a minute. There's one here that I wanted to read to you about. It tells you how to make a perfect pot of tea, and how to give tea parties, how to make tea sandwiches, what the tea classics are as far as the food, and how to make a raspberry trifle. And they have the Valentine tea for 2, which is very nice. Our children sometimes made things for us that were special. How to make a tea cozy. A tea cozy is not the same as a tea caddy. A tea caddy is something you carry something in, but a tea cozy is a quilted thing that goes over the top of the teapot. And there was something about roses in here, but of course now that I'm talking to you I can't find it. But this Mother's Day tea, and then there was a Queen's tea here, which is very interesting. And there's also teas for, like, if you're having a open house or a shower of some kind. Tea and roses. But I mean, to me, I probably need to replace this book because some of these pages seem rather faded. But if I had 2 copies, you know, I might even take one apart and frame the paintings. They're just so pretty. So let me read to you out of this book. Maybe you'd like to do something while I do this, because there's nothing else to watch here. So, among the many old-fashioned roses is the group known as tea roses. Well, this is a tea book. First introduced into Europe in the mid-19th century, they were given their name by some unknown person, an Englishman no doubt, who thought they smelled like a newly opened tin of tea, because most tea imported to England in those days was perfumed with flowers. For July, when most roses are still blooming their hearts out, plan an afternoon dessert tea built around this favorite garden beauty. The more roses, the better. If you don't have your own, collaborate with a gardening friend. Of course, I've got the Dollar Tree. I don't grow roses because they take so much care, and I don't enjoy being pricked by them. So I keep them at a distance, and I like to grow other kinds of flowers that come up by themselves year after year. But I do enjoy them from the grocery store because the thorns have been cut off. So if you have a garden and friendly weather, set up your party table among the roses. If not, fill the indoors with the smell of roses by simmering a few drops of rose oil in a small pot of water. For the table, the main centerpiece is a huge arrangement of roses. Now, as in other books that I have read, always keep your centerpiece low enough that you can talk to each other across the table. The time of these huge candle holders and big bouquets where you have to dodge to look around to talk to someone, that's over. I like the little flat centerpieces. I lay roses on the table with a big bow on them. And of course I get mine at Dollar Tree so they won't fade. Now the menu is on the side here, and it's raspberry nut scones with raspberry butter, cheesecake squares, and sandwiches, and honey roasted nuts and rose hip tea. You know, we had the wildflower with rose hips on them. In the old days, we would make all kinds of things out of them. My mother made jam out of them. We made tea out of them, hot drinks. It says here, tea made from rose hips that develop after flowers fade are rich in vitamin C. We were eating that long before anyone knew about it. We were eating, just us kids would go when the roses had faded in the summer. In the fall, in Alaska on the homestead, it was just lush with these wild roses, and we would just take off the outer skin of the rose hip and just pop them in our mouth and eat them. That could have been why we didn't die of all the plagues and flu and everything that was going around, because they were rich in vitamin C. Maybe we just instinctively knew that. So there are napkin folds on each page, and this shows how to fold a accordion style napkin, and each page, like here's one called Hiker's Tea. Doesn't that look interesting? And it has a menu on it, carrot and celery sticks and Cornish pasties, scones, butter, and jam. It even has a children's tea party. You know, I should do that even when there's no one here, just for fun, because, you know, I miss it. I think we should do some things even if nobody sees, don't you think? So, ladies, this is Country Tea Parties by Maggie Stuckey, and I'll put a picture on my blog. And I want you all to get to work now, do what you need to do. Leave me a comment and a list of some of the things you did. Don't get too personal, and don't reveal too much too many personal things about yourself. I think that's always wise, don't you? And sometimes it attracts the wrong kind of thing, but just, leave a general list of things that you did, and it helps other people who are just coming home or just starting their home, wondering, what do I do at home? What do I do at home? Unfortunately, home has become kind of a lay-around place on weekends to people, and they don't realize that from Monday to Friday, when you're here, you can fill that up with homemaking and home keeping, and then on the weekends, maybe you could relax a little more instead of making the weekends that rush time while you do all the stuff that you couldn't do Monday to Friday. So what we want to do, if you're homemaking and you're a full-time homekeeper, to fill up Monday to Friday with all the essential homemaking so that on weekends you can relax a little bit more and maybe even go out. So I did show you my teacup. I've shown you the book, and now if you've got something to do, I hope you'll go and do it. So we always start these out with dressing. Why dress up? And why in the world am I wearing this in my house? Well, of course, I'll wear an apron over it as I work. I'm so glad I almost did not dress up this much this morning, and I thought I wanted to wear it, and someone came to the door with a package, and we don't have a doorbell because we live in a cinder block house, which is like a concrete house, and you couldn't install a doorbell in there somehow, and so many of them have fallen off that had the sticky stuff on the back, and there were just all kinds of attempts to install a doorbell here, but we don't have one. It just so far has not worked out, and it's an older home, and everyone always has a solution that eventually doesn't work. So I have a sign on the door that says, please knock and holler. So I don't always hear a knock because there are other sounds around here. We're on farmland, and you've probably just heard some noise. Their tractors are all out in full galore, and there's a whistle coming through a crack in the door, and there's so much noise around here. And so I don't hear a knock because there's so many sounds with equipment, with farm equipment, with the seeder, um, with the plow, with everything else, and the noise of the engines. I don't hear the knock on the door. So I have a sign that says, please knock and holler. And it's so interesting because these people that come to the door with packages from U.S. United Postal, and the other one FedEx, and then there was one more, they come to the door, and they're usually men, and they get such a kick out of hollering, and they will say, knock, knock, package, package, and they really enjoy it. And my husband thanked one of them for hollering, and because we don't have a doorbell, I guess we're just going to do things the old-fashioned way. They get such a kick out of it when they deliver packages here. But I was so glad I was dressed up because I opened the door, and they were still there laying this package on the porch, and we all have porches here, and I thanked them for yelling. So you could tell they'd gotten quite a charge out of being able to do that on the job. So I was glad that I was able to greet them with this, and then what kind of impression this gives them of how the life that I live, because they know, these people that deliver things know that I'm always home. And I think they appreciate it because they drive around all day, and I'm sure they must go to homes that are mostly empty. But I was glad that I had that. I just felt more confident, you know, talking. I felt more professional talking to someone when I was dressed up. And one time I dressed up for my home, and someone said, "Why are you dressing up?" And I said, "For you, dear. So dress up for all those deers in your house." Now, I wanted to be sure to cover this about dressing up first thing. It is so easy to get out of bed, put your slippers on, and just kind of, there's work right at your fingertips, isn't it? I mean, there's work as soon as you get up. You see something that needs to be put away. You see a dish that needs to be washed. You see that food needs to be prepared. It's very hard for me because my bedroom is on the other side of the kitchen and the laundry room. And it's not back in the bedroom area where, you know, there's a bathroom and everything. I have to walk through the kitchen to get to the bathroom. And it's so distracting. I walk through the kitchen, through the dining room, through the living room, down the hall to the bathroom. And if I'm not careful and I don't have that singleness of mind to just say I'm going to the bathroom to get dressed and get my hair done before I come out, I can just get so waylaid. I'll see things maybe left out the night before, and maybe there's some mail on the table that I need to go through and answer. And I mean, the whole day could go, and I've experimented with this where I say I'm just going to do one little thing, and then by noon I'm still not dressed. So I would really encourage you to dress up. Even if you don't get anything done the rest of the day, at least you got dressed. At least you can say you were dressed for it. So now I want to move on to the home as a place of good stewardship. Now, this might not have been something that you have thought of in the past, but a steward was someone who looked after something that belonged to someone else. And I've always thought as Jesus as my Lord and my King, and He's the Christ of my life, and I am taking, whether I own my house or not, actually, He owns it all, and I'm being a good steward for Him. When you think of that, you can be lifted a little higher than somebody else's standards, and you start thinking of pleasing your Lord. And so when I had said that, maybe in an early article years ago, maybe 2005, that I read, I got these letters from people who didn't quite understand what I meant when I said I was working for a king. They thought that I meant that I was calling my husband a king. I am really talking about something higher than that, and that is our stewardship. And stewardship means that you care about your master's things. And so I take care of my things because, of course, our lives are given to us by God, and we want to show respect for the other blessings He's given us, a place to live, our furniture, our belongings, our clothing, our appearance, and that all is tied into that. And that's one reason I was homeschooling, is I wanted to give more meaning to some of the trivial, more everyday things that my children would have in their lives, and I didn't want them jumping up and not caring about how they presented themselves to others, and I didn't want them to leave their rooms a mess. I wanted them to have a personal pride in their own things and for this to matter. But it doesn't take long before you're around somebody who's going to say something about it, saying, oh, that's not important. These are not important things. We should be intellectual. We should be studying great intellectual things and not worrying about our appearance or the appearance of our home. I've seen the disaster in that, haven't you? People coming home from college and they can't dress right. They don't even have any kind of semblance of order in their lives anymore. They don't pick up after themselves. There's trash and paper all around. Of course, we don't use paper anymore so much. But you have probably seen, if you are aged like I am, and you remember the olden days, you will notice that there was a change at one time, that the people coming home from the colleges were unable to care about anything because their minds had been focused on only the intellect, only knowledge. But the Bible says there are other things to worry about too. There's wisdom, and there's understanding, and there's being careful in your ways. There are many things, and being a good steward is one of them. We have to be a good steward of our land. I mean, all the things that Christ said about stewardship needs to be studied. That, to me, is intellect that will affect the way you live, the way you dress, the way you speak, and the way you take care of your home. So to be a good steward, remember the phrase from the New Testament, he who is faithful in little will be faithful in much. And you think sometimes as a homemaker, and some of us who are seasoned homemakers will get a little bit dull, and we'll start thinking, oh, we just need to move to a new house, or I wish things were better, or I'd like to have a better income, I'd like to be better off, I'd like to have better furniture, better clothes. I would say do something that we used to do when we lived in the wilderness on the homestead in a log house in Alaska. We called it the big house because we started out in a little cabin, and while that one was being built, they would make a makeshift cabin for you to live in. Our parents did, and then work on the big house. And so when we moved into the big house, we would get clothing in packages from the South 48. And we were always so thrilled because, and I'm not sure where they came from, whether they came from relatives or churches, but our family was the recipient of a lot of it. Plus, there would be other things in there, household items. And what we really enjoyed doing is washing it and letting it dry, and then ironing it with a hot iron and hanging it up in our closets. And it was just to pay close attention. Those were in the old days, before they had permanent press, and everything was a different quality. But we enjoyed taking care of it, washing it, shining it, putting it away. Our shoes were polished and lined up. We might have had one pair, two pair, but besides our winter boots. But that was all cleaned. That was washed and polished and taken care of. Every item was looked after, even the tiniest thing. And so we didn't notice. You don't have time to notice that you're not rich and that you don't have a grand home if you're polishing the one you've got. And so this is one of the things I decided to do when we moved to the manse, and that was the house does not belong to me, but while I am here, before I can get my own place, I am going to take care of it. So I began to paint it, and I began to just improve it. I make sure that it looks nice. I just do improvements. And what I do is something you might want to do for yourself is do small achievable things, small achievable goals. For example, I would write down on my list when I wrote paint the bathroom that it would be a certain area. Just paint the small wall behind such and such in the bathroom. And that would be all I would do. And then I keep a little tray from the Dollar Tree that has the brushes and the paint in it. And I just use small cans so it's not overwhelming to me. And afterwards, I clean it all up, wash it all up, and put it back in the shelf in the bathroom. And that way the goal is achieved. The bathroom's not completely painted, but I painted one wall or half of a wall, maybe a foot. Just do what you can and have small achievable goals. And one of the problems with goals that aren't achievable is if they're so large, you just never get around to it because you don't have a complete day for it. I can remember when we took whole days and weeks off to paint the inside of the house, and that's nice if you can get someone to do that for you. But if you're on your own, as far as improving your house, then that is the way to go. Have small, achievable goals. Just do a little at a time. Well, it's the same with cleaning up a kitchen. Kitchens are enormous, aren't they? They're just the biggest problem when you get ready to clean them. Do one drawer a day, just one drawer. And then, while you're at it, clean the little groove that's just right there by the part that pulls out. So look inside and see all these little things. And just do one achievable thing a day, one small thing every day. But don't sit around and wait for that big day when a certain room is going to be cleaned up. And I know that if you have the time, you would just go ahead and do the whole thing. But I'm just talking about, we all have other things to do. We have to prepare meals. We have to go to the grocery store. We have to make sure the laundry is done. We have to clean the bathrooms. And we have to catch up with our correspondence. And so to include all these things in your life, then some of these bigger things like maintaining your house improvement, means that you're going to have to do one small thing at a time. And I'm sure you can hear that whistle, that lovely whistle coming through the door. And I hope it's not aggravating you. And we have a very windy day. And so here's another tip too, is while waiting for something to, like, you've got something in the dryer, you've got something in the oven, you've got something that's being prepared, and you don't just stand around and wait for it to be finished. You go do something else. You start catching up on other things. You clean a drawer. You sweep something. You look around and see what can be done. And my mother-in-law used to put her clothes in the washer and then in the dryer, but that would be the day that she would write letters. She would be in the room, in the kitchen, and the laundry room was so close by that she could hear when it was finished. And so always use those blocks of time. Don't ever wait for something. You can don't stand around waiting for something to be ready. While something is being done, you can do something else. And so the other thing that I think that's a great tip, that I've always been told this ever since I was a child, but I never quite obeyed it, was clean up after yourself. But I never thought that that's more than just getting all your clothes out of the bathroom and taking your toiletries out of there or putting them away. But I like to clean the floor while I'm in there. I like to clean the sink while I'm in there because I've been in there. It just takes a little bit longer to clean up the shower and pull the curtain and sweep the floor. It takes just a tiny bit. You're just going to be in the bathroom a little bit longer. Whatever room I'm in, I'm trying to clean up after myself. If I have been there writing letters or reading books, instead of just leaving it there for the next day, I will clean up after myself, because if I don't get back at it, eventually, day after day, it's going to become discouraging to look at it. So clean up after yourself and be a good steward in life and be faithful in little, and then you'll be faithful in much. And I always use that as a goal, because if I'm faithful in little, then I know there's more likely that I will get some of my dreams and goals fulfilled. Be faithful in little. And I practiced this small achievable goal thing. I practiced it once with a group of girls that came to my house to learn to sew. And I started by showing them how to thread a needle and how to tie the knot. And we used gingham fabric, which is a check. And I showed them how to draw a square following these checks, and how to cut it out with the scissors following the lines on this fabric, and then how to sew along those lines and make something to take home. And they took home a little pillow, which we stuffed. with some fiberfill, and another time they took home a little bag with a handle on it, just by following this checked fabric, so that they would have an achievable goal, and when they went home they had something. And I worked up to where they would wear a skirt home that was made with this gingham check fabric. Just they sewed it by hand, and they sewed the waistband with and inserted elastic, and they sewed the hem while they were at my house. It wasn't like a 2-day project. And then eventually we went to the sewing machine. But these small achievable goals, and we made napkins for the table just by making a square, learning to press the hem down and hem it. So they had a small achievable goal, and they were so excited when they came. And eventually they made a doll, and they made a doll dress, and then they got the idea. I mean, they got, okay, this is how you do stuff. This is how you make things. And every one of those girls ended up being intensely interested in sewing because they had small achievable goals. When they came to my house, they always went home with something. We made eventually a round pillow with a ruffle around it. We showed them how to make a petticoat and without a pattern. None of these things were done with patterns. And I made a notebook for them with the 3 holes in it and went into a 3-ring binder. And each time we would write down what they did and try to attach a drawing or a picture of it, and sent it home with them, so that I kept the notebooks here until we were finished with the course, and then they got to go home with their little notebook. And in those days we didn't have the fancy scrapbook papers and rubber stamps and things like that, so we just used this paper, and we bought a little folder to stick it in. But it was something, and now I can do it and make it a lot prettier. So being a good steward means being faithful in little. So you don't have much, you don't have maybe what the kind of house you want. Take what you have and fix it up and make it better. And then you're on your way. While you're waiting, you're on your way, preparing yourself for getting better off and for getting something better. So now I want to talk a little bit now more about housekeeping. And I want to say that hospitality, which a lot of you have expressed, a little bit of nervousness about how do you overcome the nervousness. But you can use hospitality as a foundation for something, for cleaning house. For instance, it's very motivating, isn't it? If you know someone's going to come next week, you start this week cleaning and getting it ready in anticipation of what they're going to see when they're here. And I remember a couple of days ago, I was expecting company, and these ladies were going to come, and they couldn't. So I had spent the week before really cleaning. I cleaned out a bookshelf, I swept, I went around investigating with a flashlight, investigating corners and things for any kind of debris or dust, and I went around sniffing and smelling and cleaning it up, and I cleaned the windows, and I did everything, and they couldn't come. But now my house looks so much nicer. But it was motivation, and so if you use hospitality, can be a foundation also for the way you dress, because someone's coming, you start planning what you're going to wear. And hospitality is also a great foundation for trying out menus. And what I would suggest to you who are really interested in hospitality, I want to discuss hospitality more separately in another video, is that you use the same menu each time, because it makes you confident. So in other words, if you're doing, and I always suggested doing a tea, because it's cold food and hot tea, and you can store the food in the fridge the night before, and it's not really getting everything on the table at the same time. And if they come to your house, then they know that they're going to Beth's house or Marie's house, because Marie serves this kind of whatever she makes. Yours will always be different than theirs. Some little sandwich, some little scone that you make, and it will be different. And you can be, it's kind of like you have your own signature menu. So that's why, if you would please just use the same menu each time, and that way you'll get used to it. And then the children will know when someone is coming, they'll know what to make immediately. They actually will eventually start making it for you if they get used to this is what you're having. Now, it can vary. As you get more confident, you start collecting ideas for making other types of food. But I have found that most of the time people are disappointed when I give up my menu, and they say, what happened to the carrot sandwiches? That's what we came here for, was the carrot sandwiches. Or what happened to your Anne of Green Gables scones? And what happened to, where's the jam? And so I don't vary mine anymore. I serve them what they like. And that's what they like when they come to my house. When they go to someone else's house, they'll have something different. So it's given me a lot more confidence. Plus, I've gotten better that what I serve is going to turn out because I do the same one each time. Now, I do have a notebook in which I will write what people came and what I served them, so that if there is someone else that I made a different menu for, I can also, if I want to have more variety, know what I served them last time, so I don't serve them the same thing this time. It just depends on what you want to do. So housekeeping is something that we do as good stewards, and it can get rather the same, repetitive, but if you will turn this on and listen to it, this is to help you with the repetitiveness of it, and it will help you to make the small achievable goals more interesting. And there are ways, which I have mentioned, like I mentioned Emily Barnes' book, The Spirit of Loveliness, in which she would clean the fridge and then put a little tiny jelly jar of fresh flowers in it, so that when she opened it, she'd be greeted with these fresh flowers. I thought that was interesting. And she would do little things like clean the sink and then put some scented candle next to it, and she would, just these little details that helped make it something to look forward to. Because I know, when I was growing up, people weren't as excited. They were hard workers and they worked, but they were not interested in the little accent afterwards. So I think that's something that motivates me, and that's one of the reasons that I began an interest in decorating, is because it gets rather dull if all you're doing is sweeping and shining windows and washing dishes. But it's more interesting if you've got something to hang on the wall. That's why so many of us went to the home interiors gatherings, to order something for the home, because it made the home interesting. I remember walking into people's homes who had used the home interiors and how homey it made them. And this is what I wanted for my home. Now, a lot of people don't approve of any kind of decor, and it's everybody's different, and it's all up to you what you do, because this is your home, and the woman, according to Scripture, is the guide and guard of the home. And we not only need to guard our home from any kind of filth or anything that is unhealthy for your family, but we also need to guard it against being too dull. And I believe that's for myself. I want it to be interesting. And not long ago, one of my children, grown children, walked in, and I said, "It's a gloomy day, isn't it? It's a sad, gloomy day, isn't it? Look at that gray cloud over there." And he said, "Yes, but Mom, you do a good job of making it interesting inside." So, you can do that, and it's not hard, and you can just use what you have. So now I would like to go on to the other part of what we talk about here. And in the end, I have a nice little ending for you. So what I would like to discuss is the old friend excuse. And we always talk about rudeness and personalities and how the homemaker is going to deal with this. Now, in the workplace, if you've gone and you've worked for a number of years outside of the home, there are rules there of things that cannot be said and things that create a hostile working environment for other people. You cannot make other people uncomfortable in the working place, and you cannot be rude to the customers, because they're your business. They're the reason you have a job. They're the ones that are paying you. You can't be rude to your customers. You can't say things and do things that are rude. But somehow, in the home, especially for the homemaker, she's beleaguered with a lot of this attitude. They look at it as not a business, so therefore they can say what they want, do what they want, and you've got an old friend, and everybody has an old friend, and that's been with us since the beginning of time, and there is an old friend excuse. And the old friend excuse is, I know my friend well enough that I can criticize her, and that it's okay. It's the same with the family. They'll say, well, this is the family, so we can talk rudely to each other. That is a false notion, because from the home, the manners flow outward to the public. It's too bad that the public has had to make rules about rudeness. And you can even get dismissed from a restaurant or any kind of place of trade if you are rude and obnoxious to the owner or to the other customers. But in the home, they think they're accepted, so, well, anything I say can go. This is my home. I live here, And in the old days, we used to get sent outside if we got a little bit mouthy or rude, to think about what we had done and stay out there till we had come to our senses. But nowadays, of course, no one does that, and so you have an old friend who has become a critic. And I have noticed that critics are people who just don't quite have enough achievable goals. We've talked about achievable goals. Their minds are not full of or preoccupied with goals. And I can have company here, and they'll be talking to me, but in the back of my mind, I'm thinking, man, I wish I could finish that dress that I'm making. But I mean, I'm still paying attention. But somehow, the critic, I believe that if someone has time to be constantly attacking or judging and criticizing you as a homemaker, they've somehow decided that the home is fair game. But actually, the home is actually more sacred than the business place. So we should have the sense to treat the home with respect. Well, of course, not everybody does. And being a preacher's wife, I could tell you some strange stories of things people have said who just don't know any better, and somehow think that once you're in somebody's house, you can start laying back and saying things that you shouldn't say. So the old friend thinks that they can start to run down their friend, because after all, they feel like they're under grace in your home and in your friendship. So they will say something like, you're not good at such and such. You've never been good at such and such. You have this side to your personality that's not very nice, or something like that. And they will criticize you. And of course, we all think, the wounds of a friend are useful to us and that sort of thing. But at the same time, I don't think there's any command for a friend to be so critical and to be constantly running down someone just because they're a friend or a member of the family. I honestly think that the home is sacred, and we treat each other with more respect than we do with anyone outside of the home. As a matter of fact, I think mothers, you ought to be thanking God every day for your children and praying with them and for them and letting them hear you thank God for them and for what they have brought into your life, and for and pray that God would help you to show them the way. And I think also the children need to be taught to appreciate their mother and never to speak against her, and to be warned that when you grow up, it will not always be that way, because somebody will say something bad about your parents or the way you were brought up and run it down. And you must never, ever take heed. Never pay attention to it. And we've never told our children this sort of thing because, well, we're nice people and we don't want to talk bad about other people. We didn't want to tell them. People are going to say rude things about your mom and dad. And the idea is to just break down the bond there, so then they can control you. And also because just that's what people do. And I think when my children were growing up, I never thought to say anything like that, and would have been helpful, would have been very helpful, and not to take it seriously when they do, when their friends or someone else does criticize your parents. make sure they say, you need to go talk to my parents if you have a problem. Because sometimes children, especially teenagers, have their minds are very, I would say, impressionable. And they might take it deeply. Like they might think, well, maybe there is something wrong with my mother, you know, and then they get an inferiority complex and that sort of thing. I think it's really important that the family not allow other people to criticize their own family, and that the old friend does not use the excuse. You know, an old friend told someone, you're not good with money. That's what she told her, because the old friend apparently had quite quite a successful life and had really succeeded in life, and now was traveling all over the world and had bought a beautiful house and then a vacation home besides that. But the old friend had not, and had kind of stayed in the same place, and had developed other talents, of course, but was not as interested in that kind of success. And so her old friend said, you're not good with money. And my poor friend said she wept all night because her old friend had said this cruel thing to her, and without really investigating. And so the old friend excuse is no good, and the family excuse is no good. We're not supposed to do that. We're not supposed to be running down family members in the home. And so the best recovery from this kind of attack, let me just tell you, we say that they're not supposed to do it. Doesn't mean they won't. But what we need to do is what to do when they do it. The best recovery for that kind of attack, in my opinion, is just to succeed and to go beyond your own goals. Just go reach a little further, and just to succeed in life, succeed in your family, succeed in your home, succeed in your talents, and succeed in your own self-improvement, and succeed in your happiness. And then the next time they see you and they realize they didn't beat you down so bad, you smile at them and you act happy. And many of these critics are basically not happy. And so the best recovery from any kind of personal attack is to succeed. Now, ladies, you've been so good to listen as you work, and I hope that you did get something done. If you weren't just sitting here staring at me. And so now I have a Pioneer Ribbons story to read to you, and it's by this successful author, Miss Lily of the Valley, and she has the of the Valley in parentheses because it's to distinguish her from other famous authors named Lily. So this one is called The Calico Dress, and it is an Allison Campbell pioneer story, Oregon Trail story. And if you remember episode 1 and 2, Allison Campbell and her family started on the Oregon Trail beginning in Missouri, and was the date 1845 or 1865? Probably 1865. I'll have to look up the first book. And Miss Lily of the Valley is such a busy person that she can't keep these episodes going as fast as I would like it, because I would like to read one to you every time, but Miss Lily has so much more to do, and she writes a different one for this audience than for my grandchildren, because she sends them to my grandchildren, and my grandchildren have similar stories, but they're uniquely different so that they have their own story. Okay, so this one's called The Calico Dress, and it's an Allison Campbell Oregon Trail story. Now, it started out with ribbons as the focus, so you'll have to go back and read episode 1, which is on my blog. Allison was thinking about the trading post the wagon train was scheduled to visit today. It would be a morning walk, or a good stretch of the legs, a common expression to indicate the length of a journey. The pioneers had awakened before the light, prepared food for the day, and retrieved anything from their wagons they would need before they began walking. Sam and his sisters and parents were still a few wagons behind Allison's. Allison's pulled the folded blank paper from her pocket as she walked and began to write. Her story told of the Oregon Trail, and this time she described in her little book the soft colors of the trail which in the beginning escaped her. The horizon was pale and blue, and the distant rolling grass was a soft sage green. The tiny florals beside her feet were yellow and pink. It was like walking in a swath of calico cloth. Her fingers flew as she sketched the small details. Today was a good day, with no illness, no sorrow, no tragedy, no loneliness, no broken wagon wheels, and the soft light of the new sun was already playing with the ribbons in her hair. By noon, the shape of the trading post was seen as tiny as a dollhouse in the distance. Anticipation was increasing in Allison's tender heart as she neared to the post. The structure was plain and certainly not anything to be attracted to, but she looked forward to seeing the treasures inside. As the wagon master signaled the train to halt, Allison deposited her little handwritten book in her pocket once again, to be continued the next time. Inside the trading post were many things hanging on the walls for fishing, hunting, and trapping. Tables were laden according to category, and one table contained used items left behind by people in previous wagon trains. A sign read, "Take some, leave some." The usual fare of books, clothes, and furniture left on the trail, commonly to lighten the load, were laid on these tables. Allison's heart leapt at the sight of a calico dress in the colors of the trail she had described in the morning. She had hastily written it all down in her little book. She took the calico dress and pressed it to her face, trying to think of what in the world to leave in its place. She then reluctantly placed the dress back in the space on the long table and sighed as she put her hand in her apron pocket and prepared to walk away. She then felt the little book and retrieved it. She picked up the dress. She pulled out the ribbon in her hair and tied it around the little book, laid it in the place where the calico dress had laid. So ladies, be looking forward to another Allison story, the Pioneers on the Oregon Trail story. Depending on how much Miss Lily has to do, we will see. And I am hoping to put these all on one video someday. Don't know. I might have time, I might not, but really appreciate this, and so I'll be looking forward to the next time. And so please let me know what all you got done and if this benefited you, and please leave a comment, because that's where I get my steam. That's where I get my energy back. I'm giving this an hour of energy to you out of my life, and I don't get anything done. I've still got a pile of, the ladies were here yesterday for the ladies' Bible class, and I still have the tea things to clean up because we had to go out and there were a lot of other things to do, so I need to get that cleaned up. And I'm giving you an hour of my time, but you give me back the energy I gave to you when you leave a comment. So please leave some comments, and thank you for your love. Thank you for your prayers, and hopefully see you next time. Bye.